And a very warm welcome to everyone here this Thursday afternoon, which I believe is the third of our series of webinars brought to you with the support of EZMed and Medici and sponsored by the SpaceNet Global Group, who also managed to get this session accredited for 1 CEU point. And thank you very much for that. I think everyone knows me by now. My name is Lani Ace. I'm a product manager at the SpaceNet Global Group. And if you've been watching any of the previous webinars, you would know that I count the days when lockdown started. And we're currently standing on 70 days to be exact. It does have a certain ring to it, doesn't it? It's a nice round number, I would say. But what I can't say is that I'm actually used to everything that's been happening over the past 70 days, or what everyone now refers to as the new normal. Just recently, I read on Facebook someone that wrote a little caption, and unfortunately I don't know who this is, so I can't give them the credit. I do apologize. But the post read something like the following: we all need to get used to the new normal, but I so want the old normal back, even if it's just for 1 week, to appreciate it again. Now, what I took from that is that we all know the old normal is pretty much gone for good, and that we all just need to get used to the new normal. Now, there are so many aspects to discuss around what is the new normal. But for the purposes of this afternoon's discussion, we're going to continue to discuss telehealth and the telehealth environment. Because as we discussed in our previous webinars, the telehealth is here to stay, and we just need to embrace it, and we need to learn to wrap our heads around that. And what we also learned is how to choose a secure platform to practice our telehealth or telehealth medicine on. Another part of the new normal, and I think a lot of us are experiencing this, is to work from home. So when I practice telehealth, what should I be doing? What shouldn't I be doing? What should I be wearing? Where should I sit? Should I even sit? Shouldn't I rather be standing or sitting on an exercise ball? Now, to help discuss and answer some of the questions here today, I've got 3 guest speakers. Some you know, some you don't. Neil Kinsley is a friend of the family, if I can call it that. Neil is the CEO of Medici Africa, which is a very safe and secure telehealth platform, as you know by now. We've also got another familiar face, Christy Carr, who's the owner of CFP Brokers, and she looks after the medical malpractice insurance of over 8,000 healthcare practitioners. But joining us for the first time today is Karen Stratton. Karen, welcome. Karen is a qualified physiotherapist, and she's got 2 of her own private practices based in Cape Town. And Karen's got a passion for ergonomics, and for that reason, she joined around 2016, if I'm not mistaken. She joined Ergotherapy Solutions, which is a company that designs and manufactures ergonomical furniture and workstation accessories. Now, this company was founded by Gary Aronson. And I'm sure if I look at all of you now who's busy attending the webinar, just because Karen's in the house, I think we're all sitting a little bit more upright and watching our postures. Karen, I know for a fact when I work from home, I'm sitting at my dining room chair, and it's definitely not beneficial. I'm actually suffering from backache as we speak. And I think we can all really do with, if you don't mind, parting with some of your knowledge and just sharing a few concepts about the do's and the don'ts and the workstation setup. So I'm gonna look at you, and over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Lani, and hello to everyone. Thank you for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to be part of this team. I think, as Lani said, we're trying to adapt to some sort of normality within the change to our practices and to family life and things. And what we've been seeing, certainly as physiotherapists, is this complaint of suddenly I'm getting a bit of hip pain, suddenly I'm getting chronic headaches, and you know, what can I do about it? How can you as a medical practitioner advise? So we're going to go through a few little tips and just little adjustments that you could make within your sort of current practice environments. I know a lot of the practitioners have changed from being in you know, a psychological practice where it's maybe a soft seating. You sort of used to the sort of couch setting. Suddenly you're now within your home. As physiotherapists, I know we're moving towards a bit of telehealth if possible, as well as the chiros. So you're going to be giving advice to your patients and certainly analyzing where perhaps some of their repetitive strain injuries have come from. So I'm going to share some slides with you with regards to an ideal setup, but what we will do is we'll look at sort of how can you change things at home without having to spend a lot of money. Perhaps obviously ergonomics is a great investment, but let's just have a look at a sort of healthy setup and how we can advise others and how we can be comfortable within our own setting. When we were sort of in our normal day-to-day routine, I think there was, you know, many hours of sitting, but we did have the sort of commute to work, the even getting from your car in the parking lot into your setting and to your practice. And now that's out the window. You might be actually in sort of one setting for more hours because you are at home and you don't have those interruptions like your commute or going out for lunch, etc. And we're sitting on average 15 to 16 hours a day. You know, it's not just for your practicing, but it's for your eating, for watching series, while you're texting on your phone, you no doubt sitting. And a lot of these studies have come in to say that all of these sort of underlying disease and pain, reception, and injury is from our posture and sitting. You can see there they've said sitting is the new smoking, and I can't agree more. What it's doing to our health is just catastrophic. So let's try and guide our patients and our own well-being on how to get up more, how to get moving, and have a look at the settings that we're working in. So I'm going to start from the top. Often one is experiencing head pain and sort of neck pain and headaches. What can we do about that? What is the sort of optimum setup? Laptops were designed for us to maybe just reply to an email at the airport or just bring, you know, a half an hour work home. But now most of us nowadays are just on a laptop or maybe a laptop and a screen. And that is our main cause of the tightness within the cervical spine. We're not designed to look down. I want you at home to just have a look at your setup in terms of consulting telehealth with clients, perhaps even just working on your phone. Where is your screen? What is it angled at? Most of us don't have it propped up onto something, which is why that curvature of your neck is getting locked, stiff, and then causing pain reception. Try to put a few books under your screen. Ideally, we want that at eye level. So we shouldn't be sitting hunched over. You can imagine what that's doing to the upper spine. Try and pop it onto some books, onto a take-a-lot box, anything that you can find around the house. Or obviously, there are ideal solutions on the ergotherapy websites or sort of just out there. Your Google search bar should be at your level of sight. So not the top of your screen, because often we're reading documents, maybe writing reports and things as we're typing whilst listening to patients and consulting, and you end up looking towards the bottom of your screen and you've still got that angle on your neck. So the Google search bar needs to be at eye level if possible. Keep your position centered. A lot of us sit in the corner of maybe the dining room table or a corner unit desk and we're leaning over to the side. That again is imbalancing my thoracic spine, and it's keeping the tension to one side of the body. Try and keep laptop as square as possible, mouse as square as possible, and obviously a keyboard as close as possible. The moment that we're reaching out for our keyboard, if maybe you've got a book between you and your keyboard, you're creating an extension of your arms and you're then putting strain into the shoulders. So keep everything as close to you as possible. My laptop's at eye level, my mouse is square, and I'm pretty centered within my position. Using your phone, please make sure that you invest in headsets if you are going to be doing a lot of sort of online consults. The moment that you have to work on notes and keep that cell phone to the side of the ear, you're obviously creating horrific tension within the neck, and later on that's going to affect you. You wake up in the morning and suddenly you're so tense and sore. Often it's from the way that we're using our phones. and not correctly putting it onto speaker or using some of those headphones that are available out there. Shoulder pain, again, we get it from either stretching out towards our workstation, so reaching for your keyboard, or having the mouse over at an angle. A lot of us get sort of busy in the day and papers become onto the desk as we're consulting with patients, and your mouse ends up sort of half a meter away from you. That external rotation on your arm is causing a lot of the shoulder pain. It can cause sort of rotator cuff issues and things. Your mouse needs to be as close and as square to you as possible, and your keyboard needs to be in line with your elbows. Many of us sit on a chair that's maybe too low for us, and we end up then hunching to get up to the keyboard. So rather pop your chair up as high as you can if it has a gas height, or pop a pillow onto your seat, and make sure that your arms are at a 90-degree with your elbows in line with your keyboard to avoid that shoulder pain. Mouse grips and things are quite common. We've seen a lot of pain in terms of carpal tunnel, in terms of forearm pain, tennis elbow and things. Again, this is from a children's perspective as well. They're complaining about wrist issues, and it's all the gaming time, it's all the iPad time, it's using the cell phone at that downward angle with their neck, gripping it with the wrists and using the thumbs, so repetitive movement of the thumbs. Try and keep your grip on your keyboard and on your mouse as loose as possible. You need to make sure that the B on your keyboard, that's B for belly button, we would advise, is at the center. So put the B of the keyboard at your belly button, and that is where your correct angle for your wrists and your rotation within your upper body should be. Watch those sort of external rotations in terms of your wrist. Again, the mouse could be at an angle, and then for those 3 or 4 hours while you're consulting, while you're working, you actually have your wrist at a slight awkward curve, and that over time is going to cause these further issues. Lower back, a lot of people say, you know, they need to put a cushion in the sort of arch of their back and the small of their back. Often people are buying these very expensive sort of ergonomic chairs. It goes up and down, in and out, back and forward. But our lumbar support, our lower spine support is crucial. Please make sure that the chair has the correct arch within the back. That's why ergotherapy has designed these sort of physio solutions where we've seen where the spine needs to be held, where it needs to be supported, and we've put that support into the chairs. So try and look, even if you are at a dining room chair, can you create some extra support within your lumbar region so that your back muscles are not tiring? Make sure that you get up often, please. I know that you might be back to back now with your telehealth sessions. Set a reminder on your phone. Make sure that you can get up, do some stretches, go grab a water or a coffee and get moving. It's unnatural for us to sit for hours at a time. A footrest is great. We can use footrests not just for being sort of shorter or feet dangling off the ground, but by putting your foot at that angle, you're creating a blood flow up towards your femoral artery within your leg. So you're getting more circulation within the body while you're sitting. So pop a few books under your desk, try and find a lever arch file just to keep the foot at that angle, and you will create a lot of ease within your leg pressure being on the seat. So if you're needing to sort of think about, okay, I've got the correct chair, but I'm still in a bit of discomfort, something as easy as a footrest is great. Paperwork, again, as you're writing notes and things, consulting clients, you're at awkward angles, you're perhaps looking down at the notes or at your iPad. Try to rather prop notes up onto something, particularly when you're not using them, and keep them centered. Again, do not twist to the side. Often this is where a lot of our upper back injuries coming from. I'm going to end off because we want this to be more of a discussion, but just a standing desk, a great investment for you, even if you can maybe do some of your sessions working at perhaps a bar counter. Set up, as I've said now, try and keep everything centered, keep it at eye level. and watch how you're standing too. Often when you sort of involved in concentrating on your work at task, you are leaning into one hip, you're leaning into one knee, and we then seen sort of knee issues, hip issues. So keep yourself balanced and in your sort of midline of your body, and just make sure that you're not putting excess pressure on either leg. Standing is a great way just to fight fatigue and things. You know, it's, as I said, the body's designed to move. It's not nice to sit for too long. So try to variate your workstation and set up something that you know you're not putting more pressure on your body while we're trying to help others in terms of their health. Lani, yeah, I think that's, you know, we're all trying to just adjust right now in terms of setting up something, and today's talk is very much about you know, how should we practice this telehealth. If you can set up a dedicated workspace, take some of these tips, and I know we'll share them at a later stage, but take some of these tips and make sure that you're in the correct positions before you are trying to help others, and just make sure that you've invested in your own office space and equipment while we're at home.
Absolutely. Thank you, Karen. That's been very helpful indeed. I remember back in the day when I still practiced as a physio, and I also did a lot of ergonomic and workstation assessments. I always taught my patients or my clients the 55 5-minute rule. For every 55 minutes that you sit down,
Brilliant.
get up, move around for 5 minutes. So
Excellent.
some of them are still doing it. And obviously, I think as healthcare practitioners, we need to practice what we preach.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think if in terms of even consulting with your patients, if it's mental health and physical sort of pain and things, try and look at these sort of daily routines that they're going through. You know, often we find that the sportsmen complain about perhaps knee pain or lower back pain, and it's not necessarily the running or the sport they're doing, but it's now that they are working in these awkward positions. So if we can try and have a look at that.
Neil, when I spoke to you earlier this week, you mentioned you were blessed with a standing workstation set up at home. How's that working for you?
Oh no, it's the best thing I've ever had. But I do have to add, just before I carry on, the best piece of advice there for Karen, which I loved, is the fact that you could work at a bar counter all day.
Yes, absolutely. I picked up on that too. Awesome.
I mean, yeah, I do. So I got it a couple of months ago, and you know what? You don't actually realize how good it is for you until you start using it, because but you know, you get into quite a bad habit because it's multifunctional and multi-level, so it goes at, you know, different levels. I'll sit at it and then I'll forget, and I've actually got to sometimes put a timer on my phone to remind me to get up. But yep. I can tell you, it is the best piece of office equipment that I've ever got. So I love it. Works for me.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, Neil, talking about tips, and you've been in the telehealth space obviously for many years. What sort of do's and don't tips would you be sharing with people this afternoon?
Yeah, so I guess today is a little bit of a softer issue, right? And I mean, look at me, I'm the thorn among the roses this afternoon, right? So lucky. But I mean, I thought of a bit of a cheesy title for mine, and these are my tips to improve your website manner this afternoon. So what I've done over the last week is I've connected with doctors all around the world that I know that are regular users of telehealth, and I asked them for 2 of their best tips on how to conduct a virtual consultation. So I got about 30 or 40 in total, and I've sort of whittled them down to 8 or 9. And these are the ones that I think are probably the best ones. And I think they're pretty general and they work right across the board. And I'm also going to add in some things that you really should not do. You know?
Can't wait for those.
Well, I mean, the one is, and Karen mentioned this, you know, it's about where is your camera actually situated. And I don't know if you notice this, and you're going to notice this now when I mention it, but you see a lot of political analysts on the news at night, and somehow or other they've managed to put the camera underneath them, and you see the camera from underneath, and you're pretty much staring up their nose for half an hour. You know, so that is so important because it takes away from the value of telehealth. So make sure that that camera is right in front of you, that you're not, you know, is not underneath you. I actually did a webinar, or actually a telehealth chat the other day, with a practitioner who, for some reason or other, had his setup like mine, but he'd used a webcam. So the webcam was on the side. So all I could see was the side of his head. So I saw the side of his head, but I could see him looking at me. And it's just, you know, it takes away all beauty of what we're trying to do here. So those are the sort of the things that you don't want to do. But let me give you some of my top tips for improving your website manner this afternoon. So the first one is, you've got to be ready to have a conversation. I mean, you know, this is not just a cold transaction that's happening. It's a conversation between yourself and your patient. You've got to be ready for that. You've got to ask those probing questions, and you've really just got to engage with your client as best you can. And I find that the best way of, the best practitioners that do that is they choose their words very carefully. They very carefully before they get into that. So be prepared for that conversation. Empathy, and I'm going to talk about empathy just now, is a big part of virtual care, as it is on face-to-face care. But be prepared for that. That's the first one. Have everything ready. There's nothing worse than getting involved with, you know, you get your patient on and then you're looking for a file and you're bending down here and you're all over the place. Make sure that everything is in place first. Get everything set up. Make sure that you've got your files in place and be prepared for the consultation. That's my tip number 2. Number 3 is, I get this question quite often. Should I use a virtual background? I don't think so. And I'll tell you why. Backgrounds can be quite, first of all, the technology. I think we got to wait for the technology to be a little bit better. And you tend to find that if you move too much, you start to bob around a little bit. I had a doctor who he had a fish tank in the back, on the back. And it was, and not a virtual background, by the way, a real fish tank.
A real one.
And it was just a real one. But you know, all I did was watch the fish behind him. I didn't really worry about what he was telling me. I was watching the fish behind him. It was so pretty. You really got to be careful of those kind of things. You really got to make sure that you have a fairly neutral background behind you. I've always tried to have this brick wall behind me. And we've all tried to do that because you want your patient to really focus in on you and the advice and the clinical care that you're extending to them. So I don't think virtual backgrounds are great. I think they're a no-no until the technology is a little bit better. Prep your patient. Patients are absolutely open to the fact that you may be working from home. You've got kids, you've got dogs. It's, you know, let them know, I am working from home. My dogs might make a noise, but please be assured that I'm 100% invested in you and they will not take my attention off. So please understand that it's okay, and patients are open to that, but make sure that you prep them for that and just let them know. Don't make it any surprises. You have to accept the limit.
Neil, there was a very interesting comment that just came up that said that sometimes that background can also take away from bandwidth. And this was something you taught me yesterday, because someone had also said when you're going to be doing one of these sessions, make sure that your cell phone is off, and you told me that it can steal your bandwidth. I don't know if you want to just mention that as well.
Absolutely, and that person is 100% right. In actual fact, you can see this just by virtue of the fact that some older operating systems don't operate a virtual background because it does take up a lot of processing power. And to be fair, if you're going to be in this kind of environment with a patient, you don't want any breakdowns on your Wi-Fi. And your point is really a good one. The more devices that you have attached to a Wi-Fi point, the weaker that it potentially can be. So you want to try and be on a Wi-Fi point where you don't have kids on YouTube and streaming, etc. Even if you're streaming it to another room, that's always the best advice. And I'll get to that a little bit more. So I was saying, you really have to accept the limitations of virtual care. One of the points that we get a lot from patients is that it's just not the same. And I think practitioners will also say it's just not the same. I think it's the fact that you're just not getting that warm, fuzzy feeling over a virtual platform. And I think that's true. I think there's that, you know, you're just not able to read a person as well as you could when you're sitting face to face with them. So you need to understand, you need to just make your patients aware. There's a psychiatrist in the US named Dr. Thomas Kim, and he's the most fascinating man. He's a psychiatrist that has a 100% virtual practice. In other words, he sees every single one of his patients virtually. And his thought is that, or his rationale is the fact that he needs to see his patients when they need to see him, not 2 or 3 days down the line when he can see them. So using virtual care has allowed him to see a lot more patients on a daily basis. But I love the way that he does. So instead of sort of sitting, he'll instead of saying, well, what can I do for you today? He'll start by saying, Neil, I just want to thank you for letting me into your home today. It's really a pleasure to be with you. And just the way that he starts that off, that entire virtual experience is, has been set.
It's
and I think absolutely. And he's managed to display massive amounts of empathy, even though it's, it's a platform like this. We mentioned the network connection. That's my next point. You've got to make sure that your network connection is good, but you've got to understand, and your patients also understand, networks go down. It is what it is. Wi-Fi go down. It is what it is. So let your patients know if it goes down, we'll reconnect again, but it's okay to say that in your preparation. And I like to say to practitioners that, make a note of these points and just go through general points with your patient before you start the consultation. We've spoken about how to place the screen. I mean, that's an important one. And I think somebody's just put up a note over there. And then I'm going to talk about how to display empathy, because this is probably one of the greatest skills that you can learn as a practitioner is how to display empathy over a platform like this. The first one is the language that you use. And the example that I gave with Dr. Kim, thank you for inviting me into your home. It's just so great with you today. I mean, I just get the warm, fuzzy feeling from him straight away, and we haven't even started yet. It's just fantastic. And the other thing as well is that if something goes wrong, and if there's a disturbance, what I find works really well is if a practitioner just stops and says, I'm sorry that my dogs are barking, or I'm sorry for the disturbance. Please know that I'm still 100% invested with you here. I'm still here.
So you acknowledge it and then continue.
And it's not going to take away from the effectiveness of this one. And tip, if you're going to type or take notes, tell your patient that that's what you're doing. Nothing worse than me pouring my heart out and you're sitting like this, or you're sitting like this. I can hear your keyboard going. Tell your patient, just want to make sure that I record this as accurately as possible. Please know that listening to you, I will miss out nothing, but I do want to take some notes. Just let them know. So I've sort of whittled down these sort of 30 or 40 points I got from doctors all over the place. And I think if you work around those, I think they'll really work for you. I do want to add a couple of other ones though, because where do the ones that go wrong? And we've been having a lot of conversation about this in the last couple of days, and that is around screen sharing. What goes wrong with screen sharing, and what is the most efficient way to share your screen? All right. So the first one I'm going to do is, first of all, you've got to tell your patient that you're about to share your screen. Have you ever watched somebody who's not entirely used to sharing their screen? That's like, okay, it's down at the bottom. Let me just find it. And then they find it. And then, you've just got to make sure that you know how to share your screen straight away. Now, I have some ideas around screen sharing. I actually think that if you're able to attach video and documents, I think it's better than screen sharing, because it's part of your record and your patient can actually go 100%. To it afterwards. Absolutely places where screen sharing is required, interactive games with OTs, etc., and educational psychologists where it's required. So first of all, know how that screen sharing works. Nothing worse than messing around and not knowing where to go. So that's the first thing. You've got to prepare. Tell your patient that you're going to share the screen so that the patient knows. You must understand, we know what this is. Patients don't. Suddenly your screen turns into an email box. They don't know what's happened. So you need to prepare them and let them know what's actually happened over there. You actually, once again, you've got to have a reliable connection to screen share. If you're using two screens, which a lot of people do, make sure that you're sharing the right screen. I've, on many occasions, seen somebody share the wrong screen, and the next minute there comes the menu for tonight because we're eating out. So make sure that it's the right screen, because that can be quite embarrassing from time to time. Close everything. Close your email box. Close everything, because nothing worse. Opening up a screen and there's an email box with 40 emails that haven't been read. There's emails coming through, and that's the next point. Turn off your notifications.
Yeah.
Nothing more annoying than doing a screen share. You're doing an interactive activity with a patient, and the emails that are coming through on the top right-hand corner of the screen. Doesn't need to be done.
Or you can hear the pinging of the emails coming in. That's also very annoying. As well as putting your phone vibration notification off, because you can hear the vibration of your phone on the desk.
There's one thing that I always do is that my phone is connected to my computer. So if my phone rings, it's going to actually come onto the computer and you're going to hear it ring. I always put this onto airplane mode before I do something like this. Because to be fair, you know, it's just respect for the people that have taken their time out of their busy day to be here. It's just respect to make sure that you plan for those kind of things. The next tip is, if something goes wrong, if you can't find your file, stop screen sharing, find the file, and open the screen sharing up again. The patient won't go anywhere. But nothing more disconcerting, I think, that, oh, now you can't find the file, and then you're going into files, and you're going to places that you didn't want the patient to see. Make sure. And then the last one, of course, is the documentation or the videos that you want to share, or the game, whatever it may be, have that open and ready when you share that screen, so that it's open and ready and it's streamlined. Do a couple of practice runs at home. It's a great tool to use. Screen sharing is fantastic and it works so well, but it can fall flat if you're just not prepared. So those are my tips for a better website manner. But first of all, on screen sharing, and then just a couple of tips. A couple of don'ts. I think you've got to dress as you would for work. We know we've had practitioners that are in pajamas. It happens. And I was seeing you.
I had an external meeting. Sorry for interrupting you. I had an external meeting, and I definitely won't say who it was with, but we were probably a group of 5 to 7 people. And a lady attended the meeting, and she had a shower cap on her head. This was a professional meeting. I mean,
So, you know, I think you have to dress the way. And I tell you what, to me, it's not so much about the fact that you look better, you feel better, and you act better, and you're more professional if you dress the way you're supposed to, and you were dressing for the office. And my last don't is one that I saw about a year ago. It was a doctor who was on holiday, and he was doing virtual consults off a boat, which was, you know, great. I mean, that's what telehealth, it works. But he took a picture of himself, took a selfie of himself, and put it on Facebook. You know, that's not what your patients want to be seeing. You know, to be fair, you want to be perfect. This is a fantastic tool that will change your practice. But hopefully, one tip that I've given you today that'll work. The afternoon has been worked.
There was an interesting comment that came in from Shelley. It certainly takes a lot more emotional and psychological effort for psychologists to have a virtual therapy session. It's very tiring. And I think you're absolutely spot on there, because you have to concentrate so hard to reading what you see on the screen in front of you. And, you know, 10 to 1, you can only see the patient up to sort of chest height. You can't see the body language further down if it's in a seated arrangement. So I think that is a very important thing to just note. And I think a lot of healthcare providers actually concentrate a lot harder as well, because now it's only visual and hearing input that you're getting. You know, there's nothing else. And you really have to read and concentrate on your patient in front of you.
There's no doubt of that. Look, you know, there's no doubt that a psychologist or a psychiatrist is not going to turn their practice into 100% virtual, you know, overnight. That's never going to happen. This is a process that's taken many, many years. But interestingly enough, there's been a lot of research to show that a practitioner will actually look at a video or a photograph with a far keener eye than they might if they were face-to-face, because they are looking for more in a virtual environment. And there's been a lot of research around that. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that probably...
Sorry?
Yeah, carry on.
No,
I think that sort of...
After you, Neil.
But as I say, I think that comes to the point of where Christy comes in, and that is, you know, around liability and claims, etc. I mean, around the world, there have been very, very few claims based on virtual care. You know, more have been around the way that the patient, or rather the complaints, or more a way the patient feels about their interaction with the practitioner. And it is that lack of empathy. Maybe I didn't spend enough time. If it was a 2-minute consultation, I feel a bit aggrieved, those kind of things. But I think you have to be wary of that. And I think you just have to choose your words carefully. And this can be the best thing that you've ever done.
Neil, you mentioned that, overseas there really hasn't been a lot of complaints, but can we potentially bring it a little bit closer to home? Christy, are you aware of any formal complaints that's sort of come out of telehealth?
Neil's put me under huge pressure here because I am one of these people that's going to say, hang on, bear with me while I try and share my screen, okay? So I'm going to, before I go off, just one of the comments that did come up on the screen, about the emotional energy, that it does take so much more emotional energy when you're having a Zoom meeting or when you're on a virtual platform with someone. And something that Neil Hopkins and I highly recommend, he's done a talk that's called Telehealth for the Technophobe. It was done through Virgin, and in my slides, there is a link there. One of the things that he mentioned, and I thought, I could relate to it, is when you're making eye contact with someone and you look at the background, and we're told, have a plain background, don't have a disturbing background. And something that he mentioned is that we do need to have a little bit of drift. We do need to be able to move our eyes away, because if you have this intense eye contact with someone, it's very draining. So for you to be able to drift your eyes, to have a look, oh, what can I see in the back of Lani's background, or something like that, or even Karen's background, I think that does help. So just, and I think, Neil, you've mentioned previously not to have too busy a background. Maybe mine is a bit busy, but I thought that was interesting. So now, everybody, let me see if I can share my screen. I'm going to put it up.
Drum roll.
Right. Did I manage?
I want to say, this is what we prepared for. I asked Christy to do this so that you could see what would happen if you had. This is it.
Right. Can everybody see the screen? Now let's see if we can go.
Yes.
Okay, so just some of the claims examples. One of the things that I really want to ask everybody to be mindful of is, please don't allow a patient to override your clinical judgment. In CFP brokers, something that we have seen, not so much with telehealth, but just with practitioners, that they want to give to their patients, and the patient will say, I can't afford to go to XYZ, I can't afford to go to the hospital, I can't afford to go to the GP, please won't you just do XYZ for me. If you feel that a telehealth consultation is not the right forum for you to treat a patient and they are insisting, I'm going to ask you, please hold the line. Don't stick to your clinical judgment, and don't allow a patient to bully you into rendering a telehealth consult, or whatever the case may be, or even rendering treatment if you feel that they need to go somewhere else. Then the other thing that a lot of people have been concerned about is the allegations that a patient or an employee may say, I caught COVID-19 at your practice. So just to let you know, in terms of the CFP brokers policy, and in fact, most medical malpractice policies, there are exclusions on that. That is not something that's going to be covered. But if we look at that, it's really difficult to try and prove. How would this person prove that they actually picked up COVID-19 at your practice? Then the other thing that we have seen, the underwriters have told us that it's not so much claims that are coming in at the moment. What we are seeing is notifications of potential claims and potential complaints to regulatory bodies relating to advertising, relating to touting, relating to canvassing. So just be careful about how you are advertising your services. Obviously, it's important to let your patients know if you are able to render a telehealth consult and to communicate that, but just be really careful about how you're doing that. The big one that Neil touched on, and the one that we're seeing the most incident reports on, is that the practitioner was cold and distant. And that's, again, it's quite difficult. If I look away now, if something distracts me, if we were together, you would also see what has distracted me. But now I'm looking away and you think I'm just not interested in you. Or if I start taking notes like Neil mentioned earlier on, and I haven't told you what I'm doing, that can create a distance between us. Then also, So I'm going to try and move you. Now I've got you on the screen here. So the comments that we received from the underwriters were, the complaints were in relation to which direction the practitioner was looking during the video consult and the overall demeanor. This was resolved as the association arranged for telehealth grooming and etiquette training members of specific association. From my interactions with the president, it has helped the professionals greatly, as many were not accustomed to video conferencing platforms. So I think that there's quite a lot out there. Then something else that I'm really concerned about after this is you do get the chances. In medical malpractice, you do get those people who are going to take a chance. Now, if you're rendering a telehealth consult, somebody could all of a sudden drop to the floor and scream and say that they've injured themselves and now it's your fault. And you don't have the advantage of actually seeing that person face to face to establish for yourself whether or not they've actually injured themselves. Then a big thing, please, and this is something to be mindful of, and I think maybe we've mentioned it before, is people are unhappy if they've been billed for a session that was cut short, or if the sound quality is not great. I think you need to make a judgment call if you don't have good reception and it doesn't improve. You need to make a judgment call to maybe just reschedule until such time as you can have better interaction with your patient. Then also willful exposure of third parties to COVID-19 infected persons or risks. Treating someone face-to-face when the risk-benefit analysis did not support such treatment, not being postponed. Insisting on using telehealth where this is not appropriate. I think I mentioned it previously that we have had someone who he wanted to make an appointment to come in for face-to-face physio. He had pain in his neck and he did not want the telehealth, and basically they were insisting on forcing that on him and he wasn't happy about it. Then you also need to be aware of something that telehealth does expose you to, but you have this exposure anyway, because most of you will be emailing your clients at some stage. You've got private information on all of your patients, and that's your cyber liability risk. Please be aware that your medical malpractice insurance doesn't pick that up. Then something, this is, I've added this in purely as for interest. Where are we going with technology and medical claims? And this is an interesting one. So with regard to cyber liability, as medical device connectivity continues to grow, there are increasing opportunities for hackers to exploit these vulnerabilities with the potential to breach security controls and jeopardize patient safety. And with this specifically, there was an American politician who actually had a pacemaker, and they had to turn off the Bluetooth functionality that his doctors had to check in to see how this is doing, because it was established that that pacemaker could be hacked and actually stopped. So there's quite interesting things that are coming. And then something else that I asked the underwriters, so this was my question to them, and I said, I'm worried now. We're dealing with something that we haven't dealt with before. So what happens now if I've got a patient on the other side of me and they're jumping around the room and they're doing whatever exercise I've asked them to do, and now they bash over their laptop? I said, is my public liability, if I'm the practitioner, is my public liability going to cover me because there's now been damage to their property, and they say that me as a practitioner, I was liable because I didn't tell them to clear the space around them? So the underwriters have come back and they've said, if the person has injured themselves and they say that it was because I didn't tell them, you know, how to do the exercise properly, yes, that's going to be covered. But if they've now damaged their own equipment, or they've damaged their laptop or whatever it may be, that's something that's not going to be covered. So please be mindful, if you're having a telehealth session and somebody's going to be jumping around, please just ask your patient to clear the area, prepare them beforehand. Okay, so that's the claims things. I've got other things that I could go into, but I think that we might be running out of time. I would just like to share something, if you don't mind. This was a personal experience that I had with somebody who was trying to get my business. This was a financial planner, and we're still dealing with each other, but the green is me and the white is him. And I just wanted to give this as an example. And as you can see, the appointment was supposed to be for 2 o'clock. As you can see, I waited until 2:23. So I'm already aggravated. I'm already irritated. So then I say, hi, I'm just waiting for the email to come through. Then, hi, nothing has come in yet. So then he says, that's strange, sent it twice. So I'm like, are you calling me a liar? Or, you know, what's happening here? Then he did this, and you can imagine my response now. A lot of people are technophobes. So he says, we're losing valuable time here, and he's got this eye roll. Can I tell you what that did to me? So the take homes from this is, I wanted to say, please bear in mind, you know, when you're rendering these services, in stressful times or stressful experiences, like getting to grips with unfamiliar technology, our triggers are far closer to the surface during this time. So dial up your patience and not number of patients. I'm talking about your patience with your patient who might be a little bit slow to get onto the technology. Be aware that you may be on the other end of your patient's frustration, and don't respond with a knee-jerk reaction to that frustration. And like Neil mentioned, have a backup plan, because here I sat with this financial planner, and he couldn't get his invite. We couldn't start this meeting, and there was no backup plan. So ahead of time, indicate to your patient, listen, if we can't get this going, I'll phone you, we'll sort something out. Know ahead of time what you're going to do if you can't hear the person or something is going wrong. And I like to think about it, when you get onto an airplane, although we all ignore it, you've got an in-flight safety card. So prep your patient ahead of time, manage their expectations as to what can go wrong, if things are not going well, what you're going to do about it. And then I just really like the saying from Dr. Rockland Miller, and he said, remember, this is about meeting the needs of our clients during this challenging time. For some, you may be the only helpful person that your client sees at all. And I think we need to really take that to heart.
Thank you, Christy. I had a quick question. I mean, I just thought about that now when you showed your WhatsApp screen. Maybe you can just unshare your screen, Christy, so that we can all look at one another. So I was thinking about it. And Neil, surely telehealth does not only need to happen on a video platform. There must be certain do's and don'ts when it comes to texting or using a phone or just a voice call. I'm just thinking of spelling errors. And I know you need to try and type fast, but try and keep the spelling clean and appropriate.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you why. I mean, and this is actually one of the points that we didn't mention when we spoke about using WhatsApp last week. I think that there was quite a lot of talk about that. It's sometimes quite, a little bit dangerous when you are mixing your social media platform with your clinical data platform. And there are things that you've got to be so careful there, in that as well. Sometimes you have an automatic upload of photographs that you take that they're uploaded into your camera roll. Now you have that data sitting on your phone. You got to be so careful about that. But absolutely. I mean, I like to, on our platform, I prefer to actually talk and it converts it into text, and then I can check it afterwards, because as I type too fast and I think faster than I can type. So, what comes out is completely different, so absolutely, you've
I've
really
read
got
some
to
of
be
your documents, I know.
I was actually going to say that, but I thought I wouldn't. But then thank you you did it for me. Just on that point, Tanya has just come on, just said that she's late to the party, and I'm glad she thinks it's a party, because that's exactly what we like.
That's brilliant.
Tanya, know that at the end of all of these, I always do an article or a summary on what I've done, and at the website. So everything that I've spoken about here, I will document it. Yeah. We will put it on the website.
There's been quite a few questions for that, and we'll make all the presentations and the tips and the article available to everyone. It will be on the website. I'll tell you all about that.
That will be there. And then my article on telehealth post-COVID-19, which is what we spoke about last week. I gave that to Lani today, so that should be on. She'll sort out my spelling errors quickly, and then it'll be on the website as well.
For sure.
Keep it on the website. There'll be an update there.
Yeah. Carol, I'm just quickly looking in your direction again. I had a few more questions for you. A lot of people claim that they've got an ergonomic chair, but they still suffer from aches and pains, backache, leg pain. What makes an ergonomic chair an ergonomic chair?
Sure, very good question, Lani. So we are seeing sort of ergonomic information and things rising in South Africa, particularly, offices implementing it for staff. But a lot of people, manufacturers and things, have jumped onto that this is ergonomically certified or ergonomically endorsed, and their reason being would be because it has a gas height in the chair, or the armrests can be adjustable. But what we look at, and particularly being physios, is as I said in my presentation, the lumbar support. So is the lumbar support sufficient for the spine? Is it giving you enough adjustability and a supportive measure when you are sitting? And can you adjust the chair to your workspace as opposed to trying to adjust your body to the chair? So just have a look at those things when you are buying. You know, obviously you can buy a 800 Rand chair that just says it's ergonomic, but really have a look at the adjustability. Can I shorten the seat slider? Can I adjust the armrests? And is the chair adapted to my spine and movement of the spine?
And what's your thoughts around using an exercise ball to sit on?
We get that question often too. I think great for shorter periods and for people who already have a strong spine or are sort of fit and they've built up that strength. But particularly over a longer period of time, you are going to get aches and pains. A ball is not designed for a desk setup, so normally they're too low for the desk. So again, then you end up hunching to get to the ball. A lot of the time, the people sort of sit with a altered posture in terms of their pelvis, so they're then almost knaping their hip flexors while they're sitting on the ball. People think, oh, my core will get so strong. Not necessarily. Your back will get tired and your core will get tired, but good to variate. So if you need to variate it for an amount of time, then great, but you need some sort of back support while you're sitting for those long hours. I wanted to, just from my side, hearing Christy and Neil, because we get it too, you know, pre-COVID, it was, I can't afford, you know, a session with you. Can you not just diagnose me or give me some tips over WhatsApp or over the phone? And now, in terms of telehealth, we've seen quite a struggle in terms of the timing of the call. So, you know, in a clinical setting, your patient can perhaps hear your next patient arrive, or sitting in reception waiting. What is a good way for practitioners to approach Christy, maybe cutting that session short, as you said, and then obviously the billing and things would need to be altered? Or Neil, if you see, all right, this person, you know, I can't show them the door, but they just keep sort of going on in terms of an emotion or a particular problem that they have, or with a physical injury. Would one just approach it, you know, in terms of let's catch up on this next time? Are you finding that?
Neil, maybe do you want to start?
I can't say that I am finding that in any way, but I think so. Certainly here, you know, the use of telemedicine is too new, I suppose, and I think probably need a little bit more time to see that. But you've completely crushed me now, because I use a ball.
Do you also use a standing desk?
Karen, can I?
No, well, I sit on the ball and then I stand at it, but it sounds like I'm coming by.
But I think alternating, there's absolutely nothing wrong with alternating, because you need to keep your spine moving. I think the spine is designed to move, and getting stuck in one position is detrimental. So going from a standing to a sitting to a exercise ball, yeah, I think that's a pretty good idea.
Karen, I think you bring up such a relevant point there. And again, I'm going to refer everybody to Neil Hopkins' talk that he did, because he specifically talks about that. And he talks about managing expectations right up front. So something, I hope I don't misquote him here, but basically he said, you can say to the patient, okay, we've got an hour, but what we're going to do in the last 15 minutes, so they're aware right up front that you've got that hour that's dedicated to them. In the last 15 minutes, I'm just going to touch base with you to make sure that you understood the instructions, got any questions, you know, and just to use those final 15 minutes, because like with myself, with that WhatsApp interaction that I showed you with, I was quite annoyed that I was waiting 23 minutes after my supposed appointment to actually get in, and he had WhatsApped me in the meantime saying, sorry, my other appointment is running late. So I think that's also an important thing. Make sure that you've got enough of a buffer of time between the different appointments that you have, but also just to manage right at the outset how long you've got to spend with them.
Guys, we need to start wrapping up. I can't believe it's been an hour, but there is one interesting question that came in from Hussein. Neil, I think this one's for you. How do we protect the conversation from the client sharing it with others? Who takes ownership of the conversation?
That's really interesting. Because, look, if you've recorded the conversation, I suppose the patient, I'm assuming the patient didn't record the conversation. I mean, if the patient has recorded the conversation, I would hope that there is, that has been prepared up front, and the practitioner has agreed to that up front. But I mean, that's highly unusual, to be honest.
No, I would think so too, but it's still an interesting question. It's not something that we often see.
No, it's not something that we often see. But, let's assume that it's a text conversation, and you're using a WhatsApp platform, if you like. And that text between practitioner and the patient, how do you stop that patient from sharing it? You probably can't, because that data is on that patient's phone.
Yeah, where your cloud-based systems might be a different story, especially if you start sharing documents and pictures, etc., etc. Sure.
Mindful of it.
We must remember that you, before you start recording anything, must obviously first request your patient's permission to do so. And perhaps that's an issue to be addressed in the informed consent, that if you do choose to share anything that you've recorded on your side, obviously you indemnify me for any liability that might arise, or look at doing something with your informed consent. Seek advice, legal advice on what you would do there.
Definitely. There's a couple of other questions which unfortunately we didn't get to, but I promise you we will answer all of these in a Q&A document which will be uploaded onto the webinar. But we have run out of time yet again, and I sincerely hope that everyone has got at least one or two tips from today's session, even if it's just how to avoid some of those embarrassing moments in front of a camera, but also to try and avoid some of the more potential serious complaints against you. I know I'm going to be watching out for the B on my keyboard that needs to be aligned, with my belly button. I'm going to look at the Google toolbar to see where my eye height needs to be for my laptop. And I think you just need to also take care with what you're wearing. You can be wearing your slippers underneath the desk, but just try and look at least decent and professional upstairs. Guys, like I said, this webinar, as well as all our other webinars, they will be available on the EZMed.solutions website. You can see the name there on the screen, EZMed.solutions. Follow the webinar tab and just look at the previous dates or even for today's date. All the webinar links will be uploaded there, including the Q&A documents, the article, and I will definitely get the presentations from both Karen and Christy. Just a reminder for those of you who missed Tuesday afternoon's demonstration of the EZMed, which is a practice management system, and Medici, your secure telehealth platform. If you missed that demonstration of the integration, that is also available on the webinar tab. Please go and have a look. Just a reminder that these two fantastic products, both EZMed and Medici, is available to you for free until the end of July. And this is just a small contribution from the SpaceNet Global Group to the healthcare providers and to the patients while we're all going through these challenging times and beyond. Guys, we had a few questions with regards to migrating from your current practice management system over onto EZMed. And I want to tell you please be rest assured, we are there to help and assist you if you are challenged with that rather, with all the necessary training and ongoing support from a dedicated team from our side. We will definitely hold your hand and assist you with that. And that should really be the last or the least of your worries. Just quickly, coming up next week, same time, same place, next week, Thursday at 4 o'clock again. I think everyone knows now how to sort themselves out on a secure and a safe telehealth platform. But how do I get my patient to trust the platform and start engaging on that platform? And we'll try and tackle some of those. Just if you think telehealth can happen like we discussed, it's via text, it's via voice, and it's via video. But if you really think about it, all your patients are using those platforms already. They're speaking to you, very often asking for advice, and you're not even getting paid for it, via those platforms. They're speaking to their colleagues via WhatsApp. They're texting their mates. They're even Skyping their grandchildren in Australia. So it's really not that much of a foreign concept to them. But watch the space. Join us for next week. Please register on the webinar tab under EZMed.solutions website. And we can't wait to see you there. I'm quickly going to look at Karen's direction. Just one last remark from your side before we say goodbye.
I think just a well done to all of the practitioners who are sort of integrated onto these platforms. Try and make it as professional as we can from your side so that we can continue to keep doing what we love, and that's helping others.
Thank you. Neil.
So I left my absolute best and last up for very last, and that is, you're the host, don't forget, leave an exit. Because if you don't, your session can stay open. And if you've got any doubt about what happens there, just go to YouTube and type in a couple of keywords and go and have a look at some people who have forgotten to close their sessions down. So write that one down. It's really important. But we'll see you next week. Glad that it was helpful.
Christy, I'm leaving the last word to you.
Okay, just wanted to say thank you so much for all the encouragement, all of these messages that you're all sending, and thank you for joining us every Thursday. It's been fantastic. Thank you.
Wonderful. To all the guest speakers, Karen, thank you very much for joining us. Christy, as always. Neil, you're such a familiar face. I thank you all for joining us today. And to all the participants, the attendees, thank you. We hope to see you next week, Thursday. Stay safe and good night.
Good night.
Good night.